CL 650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call.
Welcome to Quay Pacific's Strata Life on CL 650. This is Experts on Call, and I'm Tony Giovento, your host. And we're here in the studio with Dan Schmidt of Remdel Painting and Restoration. We're going to talk about summer painting projects, the best time to do painting during the summer. Our next segment, we're going to have the guys from CanStar Restorations with us to talk about how to deal with emergency disasters and response, and how your Strata Corporation can best protect itself. Just a little bit of info for you as a listener. If you'd like more information about Strata Corporations and governance and operations and general information, the condominium homeowners website, which is www.choa.bc.ca, is a great resource to go to, and you feel free at any time to call the office, and an advisor at that location will be really happy to help you. So Dan, our summertime theme is summertime, living's easy. You know, the paint is going on the buildings. And weather like this, we've had phenomenal weather for painting. So from Remdel's perspective, you know, how do you guys go about a project? So, you know, a little profile about your company and what you guys do when you're going about approaching a project.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, at Remdel, really we focus on strata corporations, townhomes and apartments, and the repainting work of them. And then the second kind of component of our company, the restoration side, is targeted building and envelope restoration. That's stuff, simple stuff like caulking and concrete repairs and membranes on balcony decks, the kinds of things to keep water out. Most of our work is done by our own crews, and what I mean by that is we use our own employees. It's kind of a differentiator in the marketplace. A lot of contractors right now use subcontractors, and subcontractors got kind of a bad name in the industry, and at Remdel we decided to go the other way. So our foremen are actually owners in the company, like the WestJet or Southwest Airlines model. They own a piece of the pie, so they care about how the work is done, and our employees work for us, not for a subcontractor. So that's kind of the bit of the background for us.
Well, and that's kind of an interesting phenomenon in the industry. As a strata corporation, when I hire somebody, I want to know who's working for me, right? I want to know who I'm in a contractual relationship, and I want to know who the control is going to be. But if I've gotten into a relationship where there are a string of subcontractors doing other jobs, it starts to get out of my control.
It does, and you don't actually know who you're talking to. You're suddenly talking to a different company than you'd originally hired, and we've decided that's not the route we want to go.
So here we are, summertime. BC, we have a lot of wood products. We have mid-rise buildings that are wood and stucco. We have high-rise buildings that are concrete services. We have stucco services, metal type services. We have interiors of buildings. People think about their exteriors, but they also think about their interiors. When a strata is going through the whole process of looking for a paint company, how do they get through the quotation process so that it's reliable and fair?
Probably one of the earliest things they need to do is begin to figure out what the scope of the work is, and secondly, whether they're going to have a budget to kind of tackle that kind of thing. And we do both interior and exterior painting. Interior painting often is seen a lot more simply, and I'd recommend, if you're thinking about interior painting at your strata, think about it in the fall and winter season when it's rainy. Right now, summertime means we're working hard exterior and booking those kind of projects. But if you haven't had someone look at your building, whether that be an engineer or an inspector or a reputable painting company, we go and do budgets for people and do a review. That's the first step somebody should have. Do we really need this work done now, or how urgently is it needing to be done?
So Strata Corporation, predictably, for Strata Corporations, it's all about money.
It is.
You know, it's the reality is it's about housing affordability and the cost of when we can afford to do it, but it's also about spending their money wisely, so that they're not allowing their building systems to deteriorate. So they're spending more money on restoration and repairs than there are on actual paint finishes. So how early in advance could a strata actually start getting quotes and start to think about anticipating? So is it like 1, 2, 3 years in advance? How early could they start this process?
Yeah, if you're only starting 1 year in advance, you're probably almost behind the bat at that process. What we find is most paint jobs that if you've been painted before, if we're talking the exterior of a typical building,
right,
and you're at that kind of 7 or 8 year range, you should already be repainting. So when you get to about, say, 2 years out, I would suggest, at that 5-year level, now's the time you should have someone looking at it and begin to budget so that you know, a year later, you're talking about who we're going to talk about. We've got the money, some money in contingency. You're beginning to deal with the financing sides of things and that kind of thing. So that 2 years out, you're actually painting it, and you're not getting into that same kind of situation, like you say, where suddenly the wood trim needs to be replaced, not just repainted, or the siding is beginning to rot or that kind of thing.
Well, and we talked earlier about a building that I worked with that 5 years ago they started their discussion on repainting their high rises. And this year they're actually getting the work done.
Yeah,
Right?
and I would think that's probably something most stratas don't think about is the inevitability of a strata council to bring a good idea to the group and the group to vote it down.
Right.
And when they vote it down, what happens then? Often it's another year in that
Right.
process.
Right.
And so they do need to back that process up some.
Well, the interesting thing about that example is that the Strat actually never voted down the idea. When the first quotes came in and they thought about it, they said, you know, we have 5 years that we can start planning and funding for this, and hopefully we want to avoid special levies.
That's right.
So the owners engaged. The owners engaged because they knew over 5 years they could be spending each probably an extra $30 or $40 a month. Didn't have a big impact on their pocketbook, but 5 years down the road, they're now into a multi-million-dollar project, which is remarkable.
Yeah, and remarkable in the sense of being proactive, and all of us have budgets to deal with in our own homes, and you know how we maintain our cars, all the kinds of fixed assets we have, right? When it comes to strata work, we need to bring that same proactive kind of thing. I think depreciation reports are helping that process a little. They're giving people a bit of a thumbnail of the kinds of things they should be thinking about, and I would just want to make sure that the whole painting cycle gets thought of in that same kind of process. And we can help with budgeting something even 2 or 3 or 4 years out and say, here's kind of a ballpark. You know, is it going to be $20,000 or $120,000? People often don't know. We can help with that.
Right. It's good. It's a good starting place for sure. One of the other issues that comes up oftentimes with painting, and this comes around preparation, when we're looking at building systems and preparing paint surfaces, but it's all of the other things that impact building. It's people's landscaping. It's their ability to go in and out onto their decks and balconies during the painting. And it's summertime when they want to be outside and they want to use their barbecues, but they can't go out because the painting's on the go.
Right.
You know, there are a lot of preparations that need to be coordinated. What do you find are some of the greatest tasks or the biggest tackles that you have to overcome?
Well, scheduling is certainly a big part of it. You're right. People want to be outside. I enjoy barbecuing outside as well, and so I get that. What we've tried to do actually at our company is sometimes target some projects. So we just did one recently where we actually brought a larger crew to bear on the job. And by putting almost 2 crews worth of employees on that site, we were able to move through a job that would normally have taken, say, 3 months. We moved through it in about 6 weeks. We're just completing it now. The benefit to that strata is it's, you know, middle of June, and they have their balconies, they have their exteriors back. And so sometimes it's looking at when you schedule a project, can you get it into early spring? Is it only suitable in summer? And can you work with a company that's able to bring enough people to bear that it's not going to last for, you know, 4 months to do a job that maybe only takes 4 weeks.
Right.
The other side of preparation, though, it reminds me, and I don't know, maybe this is kind of what you're getting at too, is just how you actually prepare the surfaces, the kind of background on that. Historically, anytime I've looked at, you know, paint failures, even jobs we've done where there's been problems, it's been something to do with that whole preparation stage. You know, did they do the pre-treatment? Did they get rid of the staining and the mildew and so on off the surface? Did they wash it well? Did they sand and scrape it? Did they prime it? I'm seeing much more newer buildings that are now in surface. They're coming up to their first paint job. They need more priming than jobs ever used to. And part of that, I think, is just the process of new construction.
Right.
So we're full priming wood trim or siding or that kind of thing before we paint it in order to give a better foundation. Even though it's already been painted, it hasn't been painted as well the first time that it can stand up. You were talking value over time, and that it can stand up a long time. Yeah.
Well, and one of the complaints or one of the complications that we see on new construction is frequently that the color looks right for what the finish was, but you discover that what was actually applied was only a primer and not a primer and a paint surface on top of it.
Yeah.
Right. So you have a much shorter life expectancy of it at the same time.
You do, or they've pre-painted things down on the ground level, and now they're, you know, putting them up on site, and because they're at roof level, you never actually get a proper finish coat on them.
Right.
Yeah.
Another little bit of an interesting challenge is one of the basic sciences of painting. Painting wet surfaces in the sunshine. The sun draws moisture out of materials and products,
Yeah.
whether they're concrete or wood or anything else. And in the essence, to ensure that the products and the materials are prepared properly.
Right.
Because the last thing that you want to be dealing with is going back and dealing with a litany of blisters that are on your paint surfaces.
Yeah, and fences are a good example of that, or siding as well. Yeah, where we need to make sure that they're completely dry. We use moisture testing
Right.
on sites with our foremen and our employees to test that.
So here's the kind of the penultimate issue that strata corporations go through, though. What color are we going to paint it? This is always the big battle that everybody goes over.
It is.
The legislation requires that if it's a significant change in appearance, that they need to go to the owners for approval. And sometimes the stratas actually get the authority to change color within the resolutions, and sometimes they don't. And matching colors is not always an easy thing.
That's true.
What about something like basic color design and application? Are those some of the services that you can provide for the clients?
Yeah, in fact, we've expanded that in recent years. So typically what we do is two things. We either bring a designer to bear or an architect to bear on the site and consult with them. Digital photography right now has allowed us to do up design boards for them as well, and the Strata Council then can present that to the Strata, and so we can assist in that kind of process. And then it's just bringing all those colors to bear and putting some samples on the wall. Usually people that aren't designers don't have a good visual understanding of what color looks like.
Right.
They just can't picture it.
Right.
And so we'll actually create the picture. We'll paint a part of a wall and part of a trim in the new colors and get them a couple of samples for them to choose from.
Right, which is helpful. And then, of course, if you end up buying to choose color by committee, then you almost know you're not going to get any consensus at all. So,
Yes, yeah.
So it's one of the challenges that stratas go through.
A little tidbit there, if you are choosing colors in a strata, make sure that you don't choose more than 2 samples for the customer so they can choose between A and B.
Right.
If you give them multiple choices, you'll never get a majority.
Everybody ends up dividing their opinion, and on it goes till you get no satisfaction at all.
Very true.
You're listening to Key Pacific Strata Life on CIL 650. I'm Tony Gioventu, your host. Dan Schmidt, the sales manager of Remdale Painting and Restoration, has been in the studio. And thank you very much for coming along today, Dan.
Thank you, Tom.
If you'd like to email us, and if you have any questions relating to any of the divisions, go to questions@strata.life. Questions@strata.life. And we'll be right back after these messages.
This is Experts on Call on CIL 650.